first things you need to do with your Steam Deck OLED. So you've just got yourself a Steam Deck OLED, and maybe you're new to this whole Steam Deck thing. Well, here's the first things you should do, so let's jump in. So the first thing you need to think about is whether or not you're going to use a screen protector. Now that really depends on the model that you've got as well, because obviously if you've got a 512GB OLED model, then you're going to have a gloss screen, whereas if you've got the 1TB or the limited edition, you're going to have a matte screen, and that does matter. So with a gloss screen, you can decide to put one of two different types of screen protectors on. You can use a completely transparent one like this Satisfy one, or you can use a matte one like this JSAUX one, which is what I've actually got installed on my 512GB OLED just here, which as you can see completely cuts out glare. It's an anti-glare screen protector. Now this isn't exactly the same as the etched glass as the 1TB models, but this is a massive reduction of glare, essentially, of reflections of all kinds, and I love it. There are some downsides to it, and we do have an in-depth look comparing against the gloss screen and this screen protector, the anti-glare one, so I highly recommend you check that out because we go over so much detail in that video. But if you've got a 1TB model, well, you've got etched glass, so if you put a normal screen protector over the top, well, now it's no longer etched and it's going to become reflective again. And if you put one of these on like this, it's going to reduce the image quality even more than if you'd put it on a 512GB OLED. So it's up to you whether or not you want to raw dog it or think about a screen protector. Next up, you want to consider upgrading your storage. So I've got the 512GB model just here. However, I've already upgraded it to a WD SN740, which now gives me 2TB of storage on this, and I've got a 512GB SD card. So I've essentially got 2.5 terabytes of storage in this, and for the price of a 1TB model OLED, I actually got the 512GB OLED and a 2TB drive for the same price. So, you know, there was no point me buying a 1TB OLED when I was just gonna stick a 2TB in it anyway, and it's relatively simple. It is a little bit, you know, daunting for newbies to upgrade their drives, but it's very easy. You just take the screws out of the back, remove the plate, and then you've got to carefully remove the shield on the left-hand side and not damage the ribbon cable and the speaker cable underneath, and then swap the drive over, and then you need to flash the OS. Now we do have a complete guide on how to do this with the LCD deck, so you could watch that, or you can find other guides online. Now if that all sounds too scary for you, well then just get a micro SD card, but make sure you get a fast one. So I'd recommend an A2, but an A1 will be fine as well, and you can just literally pop that in and bam, you've upgraded your storage straight away. And micro SD cards come up to 1.5 terabytes in size now, so you can get a massive increase in size just by using a micro SD card. Next up, I recommend going to desktop mode and going to the Discover app and installing Proton Up QT, which will let you use Proton GEs. So I've got Batman Arkham Asylum here, and this is actually unsupported, and it won't run if you're just trying to use it on the deck. So it says unsupported, and it just says unsupported, right? However, if I go to mine, just down here, and go to the settings, right? And then go to properties, and go to compatibility, you can see I've got force use of a specific Proton, essentially, and I've got GE Proton 825, which is Proton GE, and now the game runs beautifully at 60 FPS and everything is good. So I highly recommend using the Proton GEs because they could get a game that's not going to run to actually run, and this is free and easy to do. It's super easy to do. Next up, you can install Decky Loader and do so much stuff. There are so many plugins that you can use that can completely customize the layout, the design, give you extra features like playtime, and you know, there's just so much stuff. I could be here all day talking about it. I haven't even set it up yet on my OLED, but it is definitely worth doing because there is a lot you can do with Decky Loader. Now, if you're into emulation, you need to use EmuDeck. So I've already set this up, and I've got, if I go over to non-Steam games. You can see here I've got a bunch of GameCube games already installed and they work amazingly. So EmuDeck lets you emulate pretty much anything. It's really easy to set up as well. It pretty much does it all for you, and that's about as much as I'm going to say about it because, you know, it's a bit of a grey area. There's guides online, and I recommend if you're into emulation, then do this. For me, I've just got GameCube stuff emulated on here because that's all I really wanted, but it is huge because you can do Vita games, you can do PlayStation games, you could do Xbox games, you could do any game you can kind of think of, really. This will pretty much run it, and EmuDeck is amazing. It just makes it so much more accessible to pretty much everyone, but I highly recommend you watch or read some guides online to do this. But EmuDeck is brilliant. And on the back of that, Game Pass. I highly recommend you get Game Pass up and running. It's very simple to do. It's pretty easy. You have to change a couple of lines of code in the properties, but basically all you do is download Microsoft Edge and then change it a little bit, add it to Steam, add an extra line of code, add the images, and then just sign in and it works. You know, you can just access it yourself from your library, which is awesome. So if I go to home here, there we go, Game Pass, done. So I highly recommend that you do this because you can then stream your games from Game Pass. Now, of course, you can't natively download them because this is Linux and not Windows, but streaming them is a good middle ground, and I've not had an issue with this streaming from Game Pass. And next up, don't be afraid to mess with your performance settings, which can change so much, right? So if we go to our game just here, press the three dots and go to performance, you'll see this. Now, if you go to advanced view, loads more stuff comes up. Now, you can do per game profiles so that it will remember your settings per game, so I highly recommend clicking that first. So for Batman just here, I've limited it to 60 FPS. Oh, and before we do this, you can go to performance overlay and you can do this one or even more, right? And if we go down, then you can basically see what is being affected, right? So I've changed this from 90 Hertz down to 60 Hertz for 60 FPS cap essentially. And then what I've done is gone down to TDP limit and changed it to 8 watts. So I'm limiting the amount of power getting pushed from the deck, which in turn increases the battery life. So some games you can run this really low. You can take this down to like 5 watts of power. I mean, at 5 watts, you can see the FPS has now dropped to 40 FPS, but of course I could cap this game at 30 FPS and run this at like 5 watts or less and get even more battery life, which is absolutely insane. So right now it's saying I've got 3.5 hours at 68% if I ran it like this. But of course I can tweak this over and over and over until I get the desired outcome that I want. I've been playing this at 8 watts at 60 FPS just because why not? But each game you can change. So if you're playing like a 2D platformer, there's no point pushing 15 watts with a 90 Hertz panel. Of course you can to get that 90 FPS, you can do that. But if you're happy to play at 60 or 45 even, which is a sweet spot for most games, you can increase that battery life even more, and that is brilliant. I've had like 7-8 hours on some games with the projected battery life from the Steam Deck OLED, as opposed to maybe like 2 or 3 if I was maxing it out, which is awesome. So those are my top tips of what you should do when you get your Steam Deck OLED. Now, if you're thinking about accessories, we're going to have a video really soon about my top accessories to get for your Steam Deck OLED. So make sure you go down there and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on today's video. Like this video as well, and check out mine and AJ's podcast over here where we talk about all things gaming and of course the Steam Deck quite a fair bit. And then check out another video from me down here. Thanks for watching. Bye.